Trump puts an end to Iran's dirty tricks and has NATO's support in Turkey while cutting the concession that allowed the sale of Iranian oil. The United States is reacting harshly to Iran's attack on ships in the Strait of Hormuz. The decision was made this Tuesday, July 7, 2026, on the same day that Donald Trump arrived in Ankara for the NATO summit, received by Recep Tayyip Erdogan, with a red carpet, honor guard, and an atmosphere very different from the cold awkwardness that usually appears when the meeting is with part of the European elite.
Thank you very much.
Have to get 3 people.
So beautiful. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Nice to see.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you.
Welcome, Mr. President, the ambassador.
Iran tried to test American patience on the planet's most sensitive energy route, striking commercial vessels passing through an alternative area in the strait. The response hit the regime's pocket. The United States Treasury revoked the general license that authorized the production, delivery, and sale of Iranian oil. Meanwhile, Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, was trying to prove himself in front of Trump, advocating for more military spending, more equipment purchases, and greater real defense capability. Ankara became the stage where Trump's demands stopped being just talk and turned into real pressure on both allies and enemies. Why did Iran provoke? How did Trump respond? And how far will NATO go in its support? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of straightforward, no-nonsense content, consider subscribing because we have videos like this every day. The United States government revoked the license that gave Iran some economic leeway right after new attacks on oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. The license had been created as part of an attempt to ease tensions and keep negotiations going, but Tehran chose to test its strength at sea. 3 ships were hit by projectiles, according to the British Maritime Agency cited by the Associated Press. One of them, carrying liquefied natural gas, caught fire near the engine room. The other 2 suffered minor damage and continued their journey. No injuries were reported. But Iran's message was clear: to control through fear a route that carries a huge share of the world's traded energy. Washington did not treat the incident as an accident. The response came from the US Treasury with the revocation of the authorization that allowed the sale of Iranian oil. In practice, Trump took away from the regime one of the most important concessions that were on the table. The message was simple: there is no economic agreement for those who use negotiation as a cover, and oil is the backbone of the Iranian regime. When the United States puts pressure there, the impact reaches the political elite, the military commanders, the militia financiers, and the regional influence machine. The detail that matters is the timing. Trump was in Ankara, Turkey for the NATO summit, while Iran was trying to show strength in Najaf, Iraq, during the ceremonies related to the funeral of Ali Khamenei. The presence of Masoud Pezeshkian, military figures, and Iranian authorities alongside Iraqi leaders showed that Tehran is still trying to project an image of regional command. But that image clashed with reality. A regime that flaunts its power in the streets but loses ground when Washington shuts off the economic tap. Turkey has become a central piece on this board. Trump arrived in Ankara with a political gesture that did not go unnoticed. Alongside Erdogan, he spoke of a special relationship, praised Turkish loyalty, and opened the door to considering the sale of F-35 fighter jets to Turkey, a topic that has been stalled for years because of Turkey's purchase of Russian defense systems. The scene is significant because it shows Trump choosing where to invest political capital within the alliance. Instead of bowing to the old Brussels and Paris axis, he appeared more comfortable in Ankara, where the conversation seemed more direct, more strategic, and less burdened by European posturing. Erdogan also came out stronger. Turkey hosted the NATO summit on July 7 and 8, welcoming leaders from the alliance's 32 nations and putting Ankara at the center of the debate on defense, Ukraine, the Middle East, and the military industry. The Turkish Vice President, Sevide Yilmaz, treated the meeting as a historic gathering for deterrence and stability. In political terms, Turkey showed that it is not a mere bystander. It is a bridge, a base, a frontier, an industrial power, and a source of influence. For Trump, this matters because the crisis with Iran cannot be resolved with speeches in Washington alone. NATO tried to reposition itself in response to Trump. Mark Rutte stated that defense spending is money well spent and pushed the alliance toward a showcase of new military projects and billion-dollar contracts.
Mark Rutte in the Washington Post yesterday. He writes, quote, NATO 3.0 is emerging and buying from the Americans. The alliance, which relied too much on the strength of the United States, is building its own strength and also buying from the Americans, obviously referring to the sale of military equipment. This, combined with President Trump's comments today, seems to indicate a more optimistic tone for an alliance, for the NATO alliance as they meet in Turkey. Do you agree with that?
Trump has argued for years that Europe should better share the burden with NATO allies by spending more on defense.
Trump's demand for more investment was no longer just a campaign complaint. It became official policy. The alliance knows it depends on American strength, but it also knows that the days of a comfortable Europe, spending little and expecting endless protection from Washington, are over. That's exactly Europe's predicament. Trump demanded this for years, was criticized for it, and now NATO itself is trying to prove he was right to demand more responsibility. This movement also has an impact in the Middle East. Iran has bet on testing the Strait of Hormuz while trying to reintegrate itself into regional security and economic arrangements. The problem is that integration cannot become a reward for blackmail. If Tehran wants to be treated as part of a new regional order, it needs to stop acting like the armed owner of the strait. Attacking vessels to force the world to use the route the regime approves is not diplomacy, it's coercion. And that's where the American decision stands out. Trump didn't respond with a long speech. He responded by taking away a concrete advantage. Israel also appears as a part of the regional calculation. There's a discussion about a new architecture in the Middle East, with some people arguing that Iran should be included to reduce instability. But there's a clear risk in this perspective, replacing Iran's isolation with Israel's isolation. That doesn't create peace, it just shifts the target of the pressure. A regional order that rewards Tehran after attacks at sea and pushes Israel out of the game is flawed from the start. The real path to stability is to contain those who use militias, oil, and maritime routes as political weapons. The Iranian movement in Najaf reinforces this point. The regime brought its political and military leadership to walk together in Iraq in an attempt to show unity after internal losses and external pressure. Pezeshkian appeared as president, military figures were present, and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi also sought more visibility. The image serves for internal consumption and for regional allies. But outside the Iranian sphere, what was seen was something else. The regime trying to appear solid, while its main source of money is once again coming under American pressure. The market's reaction showed that the decision was not a small one. The reaction to the decision was not minor. Giorgia Meloni arrived at the summit dinner in Ankara. The Italian Prime Minister was the last leader to arrive at the dinner. UMass. The image gained traction because Trump had been having friction with European allies and because Italy was mentioned in the context of American complaints about a lack of help in critical moments. Even so, Meloni remains one of the European leaders with the closest political relationship with Trump. The scene in Ankara showed a Europe arriving for a meeting where the tone had already been set by Washington. China came up in another warning that day. Outside the center of the political crisis, but within the same framework of global instability. Two tornadoes hit Hubei province with winds of up to 93 miles per hour, causing deaths, injuries, and destruction in cities like Huangxi, Huanggan, Ezhou, and Jianing. Hubei is an industrial and technological hub, and events like this are rare in the region. This added more pressure to the news coverage, with energy, defense, extreme weather, and supply chains all emerging at the same time as weak points in Hubei. The Ankara summit was not just a meeting of leaders, it was a test of authority. Trump arrived by demanding more from allies, praising Turkey, pressuring Europe, and punishing Iran at the moment when the regime tried to push the limits in the Strait of Hormuz. The crisis continues with tough negotiations, but the signal this Tuesday was serious. The Iranian regime lost an economic concession that had strategic value. Thank you very much for watching this video until the end. Support our project and contribute financially through the Pix key that appears on your screen. We are an independent channel, focused on keeping you informed with the truth. Your contribution helps us keep going.